All right, so today we're going to be diving into some fascinating legal territory. It's NDA contamination. You've probably signed tons of NDAs, I mean, countless, right?
Oh, yeah.
But did you know that there's this kind of hidden risk
Oh, yeah.
that goes way beyond just, keeping secrets?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a bit of a legal minefield out there, especially, in the tech world
Yeah.
where, everybody's racing to the next, big thing. So we're going to be looking at the insights of Gies's Wyss, who's a bit of a legal eagle.
Okay.
He specializes in technology companies. He's got a whole series on this.
Mhm.
And we're here to sort of extract the golden nuggets, the things that can save you from, a legal headache down the road.
It's not about someone just like stealing your code
Right.
or your designs or something like that.
It's way more insidious than that. So imagine you're working on this groundbreaking project for years,
Yeah.
and then suddenly a company comes out of the woodwork claiming you borrowed their ideas,
Oh, wow.
thanks to some old NDA that you signed. And they might not even be right. But even defending yourself can be massively draining in terms of resources and time.
So even a baseless lawsuit can be a weapon.
Yeah.
Wow.
He uses this great analogy of a perfect storm in the tech world where parallel development is rampant.
Okay.
Everybody's chasing similar goals, making it almost impossible to prove that you didn't inadvertently cross paths with somebody's confidential information somewhere down the line.
It's like just by chance you happen to have the same idea.
Right.
Yeah. He shares a story actually about a startup
Yeah.
that pitched a battery technology years ago and then bam,
Right.
hit with a lawsuit when a bigger company released something similar.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where the real danger lies, especially for startups and smaller companies.
Yeah.
For a larger company, even a frivolous lawsuit
Right.
might just be the cost of doing business.
Right.
But for a smaller company, those legal fees can be crippling,
Yeah.
even if you win.
And it's not even just the financial hit either, right?
No, it's not.
He outlines all these kind of cascading consequences.
Absolutely. You've got key people pulled away from doing what they do best, which is innovating, to deal with this legal mess. And then that creates this chilling effect where teams start second-guessing every idea for fear of potential accusations down the road.
Wow.
So it stifles the entire creative process.
So we're walking on eggshells all the time, basically.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. He actually lays out some really solid preventative measures.
Okay.
And it's not just about being super careful what you sign, but also how you operate. Before and after an NDA is even on the table.
So it's more holistic than just the legal document.
You can think of it as building a culture of smart engagement, almost like a prenup for your ideas.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where do we even begin?
So he's a big proponent of documentation. He calls it building a forensic trail
Okay.
for your innovation process.
So that if someone comes knocking, you can actually prove.
Oh, exactly. You can say, hey, look, this is what we were doing.
We came up with this independently.
Independently, here's the proof.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So meticulously cataloging your research and development, documenting the state of your projects at different stages.
Right.
And even keeping records of those, brainstorming sessions
Yeah.
where the magic happens.
That's a lot of paperwork, though.
Yeah.
But I guess if it can ward off a legal battle.
Yeah, it's good. And luckily, there's specialized software that can help you do that, streamline that process,
Right.
keep everything secure.
Okay.
It's almost like a digital vault for your intellectual property.
A digital vault, huh?
Yeah,
Okay. Maybe that's a topic for a future deep dive.
we could do that.
Yeah. But let's say we've got our documentation game on point.
Right.
What else should we be thinking about?
So his next piece of advice is about choosing your dance partners wisely.
Okay.
He emphasizes that most NDA situations are perfectly fine, but there are some red flags to watch out for.
What kind of red flags?
So if someone is overly pushy about signing an NDA, getting aggressive during the negotiations, or just giving off bad vibes, those are signs to proceed with caution.
Okay.
He even gives you some questions to ask yourself, like, who are they? What's their motivation? What's the power dynamic?
Right.
Do they have a history of being litigious?
Oh, wow.
You
So due diligence goes way beyond just like reading the fine print.
It does. It absolutely does. And sometimes walking away is the smartest move, even if it's a tempting opportunity.
Right.
So you're basically safeguarding your future innovation.
That's a tough call.
Yeah.
But I can see how it would be worth it in the long run.
Yeah.
So what if you do decide to engage?
Okay.
What are your options then?
So he dives into some pretty cool legal tools that go beyond just signing whatever is put in front of you.
Okay.
So you can actually try to tailor the NDA terms to limit the scope of the information being shared. Set specific time periods for confidentiality and control who has access.
So you're not completely at the mercy of the other party.
Right.
There's some room to negotiate.
There's definitely some room to maneuver.
Okay.
He also mentions these things called non-confidential disclosure agreements, or NCDAs.
Yeah.
And they're like a safe space for early stage talks.
Right.
Where you can explicitly state that the information being shared isn't confidential.
Oh, so that's way less risky.
Right.
Yeah.
But I imagine navigating all this requires some serious legal expertise.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
You don't want to be doing this on your own.
No.
So he stresses that having legal counsel, especially someone who understands the nuances of NDA contamination, is crucial.
Right.
So they can help you customize agreements, spot potential pitfalls, and just basically be your guide through this legal jungle.
So it's like finding a good Sherpa. All right, so we've gone from feeling a bit intimidated by NDAs to having,
a better understanding.
A better understanding of the risks and maybe some concrete strategies for minimizing those risks.
It's all about being proactive, not reactive.
Right.
It's not just signing a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You're setting the stage for your company's future.
And you know what's fascinating is he hints that the very definition of novel in tech is constantly evolving.
It is, yeah.
Like, what does that even mean for
the implication?
Future legal battles? Like, if the lines are blurring all the time, it seems like documentation and careful partner selection become...
even more critical.
Yeah, even more important.
Absolutely.
Wow. So it's like this whole new dimension of risk assessment.
It is.
That emerges. And he doesn't even really dive into that, does he?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's something worth pondering, for sure.
Yeah. We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
Let's take a moment to kind of unpack some of these strategies in more detail.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so we've talked about building that forensic trail through documentation, being really selective about who we partner with.
Right.
But let's get even more practical here. Like, what are some specific things that we can actually do to make sure that we're not accidentally contaminating our own work, even after we've signed an NDA?
Yeah. You hit on a really crucial point. So he calls this inadvertent disclosure. And this is a real danger. Okay. Especially in these fast-paced environments, where teams are juggling multiple projects. So you sign the NDA, you're all excited about this potential collaboration. Yeah. And then suddenly information starts to blur.
I can see that happening.
Yeah.
You get kind of caught up in that excitement of a new idea. Yeah. And then those lines start to get fuzzy.
Yeah, it's almost like osmosis, before you know it. Yeah.
Elements of their confidential information have seeped into your own development process without you even realizing it.
So how do we avoid that? Like, do we have to lock our teams in separate rooms?
Right.
And just ban all communication?
Well, not quite. But he does stress the importance of establishing clear protocols and a culture of vigilance when it comes to handling this information.
Okay.
So, limiting access only to those who absolutely need to know.
Right.
Having secure storage systems for all the documents. Yeah. And just making sure that everyone involved understands the terms of the NDA.
Like it's their own personal mantra.
Yeah. Like it's tattooed on the back of their hand.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're essentially creating this clean room for ideas.
Right. A safe space to explore them.
Yeah. A space where they can be explored without contaminating your own independent work.
Yeah.
But it's not just about physical separation. It's also about mental discipline.
Oh.
Right.
So teams need to be trained to recognize those moments where they might be subconsciously influenced by outside information and to have a system for flagging those potential breaches.
So it's like it goes back to that forensic trail idea.
It does, yeah.
You need to not only be documenting your own ideas, but be really careful about isolating and protecting theirs.
Exactly. You need to be able to reconstruct the timeline of your development process and prove that you were working on these concepts before you ever laid eyes on their confidential information.
Yeah. And here's another layer of complexity. Like, even if you're convinced you've done everything right, you can't control what the other party does.
You can't.
He mentions cases where companies have been blindsided by accusations of contamination.
Yeah.
Even when they had strong safeguards in place.
Exactly.
So what do you do to protect yourself from that kind of situation?
It's tough.
It almost feels like you're at the mercy of their interpretation.
Well, one of his most practical pieces of advice
Yeah.
is to maintain open communication
Okay.
with the other party throughout the process.
Right.
So regularly checking in with them, making sure that they're comfortable with how you're handling their information.
Oh, okay.
And if there are any concerns,
Right.
addressing them immediately. So it's about building transparency and trust.
Right.
Almost like your partners in this whole safeguarding the confidentiality,
Okay.
not adversaries.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, looking back to all the NDAs I've signed
Right.
over the years, I don't think I ever really had that kind of open dialogue.
Yeah.
It was kind of like sign and forget.
It's a common mistake.
Yeah.
But remember, even with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
misunderstandings can happen, and misunderstandings can lead to very expensive legal consequences.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about prevention,
Right.
but let's face it, sometimes things go wrong.
They do.
Despite our best efforts, what happens if we actually get hit with a lawsuit?
Right.
What then?
That's when you really need that expert legal counsel that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But even before you lawyer up,
Okay.
there are things you can do
Okay, like what?
to prepare yourself.
I'm feeling that intimidation factor creeping back in.
First of all, don't panic.
Okay.
I know it's easier said than done.
Right.
But it's crucial to stay calm and rational.
Yeah.
A lawsuit doesn't automatically mean you're guilty.
Right.
It simply means that there's a claim that needs to be addressed.
So what's the first thing you do when that dreaded letter arrives?
So remember that forensic trail we talked about?
Yeah.
That's where it becomes your lifeline.
Okay.
So you gather all your documentation related to the project and the NDA. You need to be able to tell the story of your innovation process step by step.
Right.
And prove that you didn't rely on their information.
Okay.
So show that you were already working on these ideas before you received their information,
Okay.
that your development path was independent, and that you took all the necessary precautions to prevent contamination.
Okay, but what if there were points where our team did have access to their information?
Yeah.
Is that game over?
Not necessarily.
Yep.
Not necessarily. This is where having those clear protocols for handling the information becomes really crucial.
Okay.
If you can demonstrate
Yeah.
that you had these strict procedures in place,
Right.
that access was limited to essential personnel, and that all interactions were documented,
Right.
that strengthens your case.
It sounds incredibly detailed.
It is, yeah.
And complex.
I don't know.
It can be.
I'm starting to feel overwhelmed.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. It is a lot to process.
Yeah.
And this is definitely not something you want to try to handle on your own.
Right.
But the key takeaway here is that preparation is everything.
Okay.
The more you do up front
Yeah.
to minimize the risks.
Yeah. The better equipped you'll be to navigate these choppy legal waters.
Well said. It's amazing how much complexity there is
Right.
underneath the surface of something that seems so simple,
Yeah.
like an NDA.
It's a hidden danger that a lot of companies, especially startups, aren't even aware of.
Yeah.
And the consequences can be devastating.
So it sounds like the biggest takeaway here is awareness.
Absolutely.
We need to understand the risks, take proactive steps to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Document, document, document.
Couldn't have said it better myself. There's one more aspect of his advice that I think is especially relevant for our listeners today.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of not just protecting our own companies, but also fostering a culture of respect for intellectual property within the whole tech ecosystem.
That's an interesting point. It's almost like an ethical dimension to this whole conversation.
It is. It's not just about avoiding lawsuits.
Right.
It's about creating a healthy and ethical environment for innovation to thrive.
Right.
So we need to be mindful of the information we share, respect the boundaries of NDAs, and recognize that collaboration doesn't have to come at the expense of confidentiality.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between openness and protection.
It's like we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Like the health of the entire ecosystem depends on each of us.
Doing our part.
Yeah, doing our part to protect intellectual property.
To protect everybody's IP.
Yeah. Exactly.
And he believes that by raising awareness and promoting best practices, we can create a more sustainable and collaborative future for the whole tech industry.
That's a vision I can definitely get behind.
Yeah.
But before we get too idealistic here, I've got one more practical question.
Okay.
He mentions repeatedly that having the right legal counsel is essential, especially for startups.
Right.
And smaller companies that might be operating on tight budgets. good legal advice can be expensive.
It can be. It is. It's definitely an investment. But he argues that it's one of the smartest investments you can make.
Okay.
So having a lawyer
Right.
who understands these nuances of NDA contamination can help you avoid pitfalls right from the get-go.
Right.
You know, they can review NDAs before you sign them. They can help you craft your own agreements that minimize risk. They're basically your go-to resource for any questions or concerns that might arise. Think of it as an insurance policy for your intellectual property.
Yeah.
You know, it might seem like an unnecessary expense until you actually need it.
Right.
And then you'll be incredibly grateful that you have it.
And I imagine a good lawyer can also help you negotiate
Oh, absolutely.
more favorable terms in your NDAs.
Yes, absolutely. They can help you push back on unreasonable demands.
Right.
Ensure that your own interests are protected. Make sure the agreement is fair and balanced. It's all about leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with larger, more established companies.
Yeah. So finding the right lawyer is crucial.
It is.
But how do you even go about doing that?
Right.
Especially if you're new to this whole world of intellectual property law.
It can feel like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
So he's got some good advice on that front as well. He recommends seeking out lawyers who specialize in technology and intellectual property. So look for someone who has experience working with companies in your industry, understands the specific challenges that you face. Don't be afraid to ask for referrals from other companies in your network, or reach out to organizations that support startups.
And probably someone who can explain things in plain English.
Absolutely. You want someone who can break down those complex legal concepts in a way that you can understand. Someone who can be your trusted advisor, not just a legal representative.
It's like finding a good doctor.
It is.
You need someone you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know who you can trust.
Exactly. And just like with a doctor, you might need to shop around a little bit to find the right fit.
Yeah.
So talk to a few different lawyers. Ask about their experience, their approach, their fees. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And really get a sense of whether they're the right fit for you and your company.
So do your research.
Yeah.
Get referrals.
Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
Solid advice.
And remember, this isn't just about protecting yourself from lawsuits. It's about creating a strong foundation for your company's future.
Well said. This has been incredibly eye-opening. We've gone from feeling intimidated by NDAs to feeling like we can navigate them strategically.
And the best part is you're now equipped with the knowledge and the tools to minimize risk and protect your company's most valuable assets.
It's amazing how much you can learn from just,
a few well-written articles. Yeah. His insights are particularly valuable. Because he's not just a legal expert, he's also deeply embedded in the tech world. So he understands the pace of innovation, the challenges startups face, and the unique risks associated with intellectual property in this rapidly evolving landscape.
And speaking of evolving landscapes, his final point really got me thinking. He said something about how the concept of novelty in tech is constantly evolving.
It is, yeah.
What are the implications?
That's a great question.
For future legal battles.
It's something that legal experts are grappling with right now. You know, as technology advances at this ever-increasing pace, it's becoming more and more difficult to determine what's truly new and what's simply an iteration on existing ideas. You know, so the lines are blurring, which makes clear documentation and careful partner selection even more crucial.
It's almost like we need to be even more vigilant and proactive.
We do. We do.
Than ever before.
And it also highlights the need for ongoing education and awareness. We can't just rely on what we knew a year ago. The legal landscape is constantly shifting. And we need to stay ahead of the curve.
So we got to keep our ear to the ground. Pay attention to emerging trends.
Absolutely.
And maybe even have those regular check-ins with legal counsel. To make sure that we're not falling behind.
It's a continuous learning process.
Well said. Well, listeners, it sounds like we all have some homework to do.
We do.
We do. But in the meantime, remember, the key takeaway from this deep dive. Knowledge is power.
It is.
By understanding the risks and taking proactive steps. You can navigate this world of NDAs with confidence.
Absolutely.
Ensure that your innovations are protected.
And don't forget, collaboration and innovation can thrive in an environment of respect and awareness.
Absolutely. It's not about stifling creativity or operating in silos.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where openness and protection coexist.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
Until next time.